For more than a century, General Electric built the things that built the modern age. The turbines that lit the cities, the superchargers that carried America's bombers to war, the machines humming in 1 million American homes. At its peak, it even became the most valuable company in the world. But fast forward to today, and all of that is gone. The name General Electric still survives, but what it stood for doesn't. What killed it wasn't a market crash or a rival from overseas or a war. It was one man. At his peak, he was called the greatest manager who had ever lived. And he would go on to inspire an entire generation of Americanos. If you want to understand how corporate greed killed industrial America, you first have to understand his story. The story of how America's most iconic CEO, Jack Welch, destroyed General Electric. To understand what was destroyed, you first have to understand what it was. 113 years before that turbine spun, the company didn't even carry its name yet. And the man whose name it bore was about to lose the argument of his life. In the 1880s, Thomas Edison had electrified Lower Manhattan with direct current, and he was certain it was the future. He was wrong. A former employee of his, Nikola Tesla, backed by the industrialist George Westinghouse, was pushing a rival system, alternating current, cheaper to carry over distance, and on course to make Edison's whole network obsolete. Edison fought back. The only way a proud man fights a better idea. He tried to frighten people away from it. In December 1887, he circulated a letter warning that alternating current was a lethal public menace, and his camp spent the next several years staging gruesome demonstrations meant to prove the point. The money behind Edison watched all of it with a colder eye. That money belonged to J.P. Morgan, the most powerful banker in America, the man who had bankrolled Edison since financing the original Edison Electric Light Company back in 1878. Morgan did not care who was right about currents. He cared about returns. On the 15th of April 1892, he engineered a merger to settle the matter, fusing Edison General Electric with its great rival Thomson Houston. The man he placed in charge was not Edison and was not an engineer at all. Charles Coffin, a former shoe manufacturer from Lynn, Massachusetts, a salesman to his bones. When the combined giant was named, the word Edison was quietly dropped from the front of it. The verdict came a year later. In 1893, Westinghouse won the contract to light the Chicago World's Fair, and then the far greater prize, the contract to harness Niagara Falls itself. Edison's current had lost on the largest stage there was, and Edison himself, already pushed to the edge, sold the last of his shares by 1894 and walked away from the empire that no longer carried his name. Hold on to that image of a financier reaching in from outside to decide what a company built by inventors was allowed to be, because more than a century later, almost the same thing happens again, right at the end of this story. What strikes me every time I go back to this is that the single most important decision of the company's first decade wasn't made by the inventor at all. It was made by the shoe salesman. In 1900, Coffin established the first industrial research laboratory in the United States right there in Shinkaidi, turning a manufacturer into a permanent invention machine where the future was built on purpose, not stumbled into. And it is on that turbine line in those first years that we meet the other character in this story. A young man, a skilled hand, one of thousands who learned to balance a rotor and read a casting by eye. He is nobody famous, but for the next century his family will work this floor and the company will be the air they breathe. He is the soul of the place, finally given a body. To read a casting by eye is a skill that takes years and cannot really be written down. You learn the color the steel turns when it is sound, the note it gives under a hammer when it is not, the hairline shadow that betrays a flaw buried deep inside a part the size of a man. The grandfather carried that knowledge in his hands, the way a violinist carries a tune in his. And he handed it on the only way it can be handed on, by standing beside the next man at the lathe for 20 years. That is what a great industrial company actually is underneath the share price. Not a balance sheet, but a few thousand people who each know one near impossible thing very well. From there, the climb is almost vertical. G locomotives haul freight across a continent. In the Second World War, GE turbo superchargers push American bombers higher than enemy fighters can reach, and the company's first jet engine, the IA, makes its first thunderous run on the 18th of April, 1942, taking to the air that October, too late as it turned out, to fight the war it was built for. In 1953, the vast appliance park opens in Louisville, and whole towns grew up around G plants, the way medieval towns once grew up around cathedrals. By the time our young hand has an old man's hands, his own grandson has joined the line beside him. By the middle of the century, there was almost nothing electrical the company did not touch. It built the locomotives and the light bulbs, the X-ray machines and the radio networks, the jet engines and the refrigerators humming into the kitchens of the families whose fathers had built them. To live in a GE town was to live inside a single generous idea, that a company could make the best of everything and look after the people who made it. For half a century, that idea held. By 1972, the chairman's office belongs to Reginald Jones, courtly, respected, a man Washington listened to. And in 1981, Jones did the hardest thing a great leader ever does. He chose who came after him. He ran a famous, brutal internal contest, and when it was over, he passed over the safe candidates and handed the company to a volatile, fast-talking 45-year-old. Only the 8th chairman the company had ever had. Jones believes he has chosen the man who will protect everything this company stands for. He has no idea he has just handed the keys to the one person in the building who has never once mistaken a factory for a home. The man Jones chose had come up from nowhere, and he never let anyone forget it. Jack Welch was born on the 19th of November, 1935, in Peabody, Massachusetts, the only child of a railroad conductor who punched commuter tickets for a living. He grew up with a stutter so severe that a waitress once brought him 2 tuna sandwiches, having heard his stammer on the orders about number 2. His mother told him it was simply that his brain ran faster than his mouth could keep up with, and he believed her for the rest of his life. That restlessness, the certainty that he was quicker than the room, never had left him. He joined GE in 1960 as a junior chemical engineer in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, on a salary of $10,500 a year. In 1963, he very nearly ended his own career and several others. A chemical explosion blew the roof clean off the plastics plant he was running. No one died, but he was summoned to explain himself to a senior executive who could have fired him on the spot and chose not to. The men around him learned early that the rules bent for Jack. By 1981, he had climbed every rung, and at 45, he became the youngest chairman and chief executive in the company's history. Taking the chair Reginald Jones had warmed for him. The grandson of our old turbine hand is on the floor now, a skilled man building the same machines on the same line his grandfather worked. He has no particular reason yet to notice the new name on the top office. He's about to learn it very well. Late in 1981, in a speech in New York, Welch set out the philosophy that would define the rest of his life. A company, he argued, owed its first loyalty not to its products, not to its towns, not to the men on its lines, but to the people who owned its shares.